So like we said last time, just remember the whole Indian of the cheetah and the gazelle.
Gazelle.
Yeah, all it takes is one other gazelle just to run past him, and he just goes like that, one flick with his eyes, and he loses his lunch. So we should turn off
I
turn off
put my phone
devices.
on Do Not Disturb.
Let's be here. Mama's be here for like less than an hour, but let's be here. We've got nowhere else to go. There's nothing better to do. Literally, this is what we were created to do for the next hour, B'ezrat Hashem. That said, so this project that I've called Tanya Inside Out is a big project. I've been waiting really for many years to do this, and the heads up is like this. This is a serious opportunity for you guys, yeah. In that, I said this to Yoel before. There's the idea of inspiration, and then there's the idea of das. Okay, inspiration is compared to a vegetable, which you plant. You plant the cucumber, pops out the ground, you eat it, and now you have to plant another cucumber. You have to plant another seed, and the same thing again. That's inspiration, meaning it just keeps as quickly as it comes, it goes. It's not very choshev. Das, on the other hand, shalom aleichem. Das, on the other hand, when you know something, meaning it becomes you, yeah, that's like a tree, and that's going to be putting out fruits for the rest of your life. But it's much easier to be inspired than to know something. Much easier. To get inspired is easy. If you've got the right guy, yeah, you'll get inspired. But getting to know something, only you can do that. Stand by the right man and everyone will get inspired. But only you are able to get something to the level of knowledge, to get something to the place where you have das, where it becomes like a fiber, like part of the weave of part of the thread of your soul. Okay, only you've got that opportunity. How do we do that? By getting these ideas so clear that you could get woken up in the middle of the night and you'd be able to just speak it out. That you could see it in another book from a goy, with language that's opposite of the language that you've been learning it, and say, oh, this is the Indian. Wow. And sing from this end down. It's a very deep Indian, yeah. So you right now you've got this opportunity. I don't know if in the next 50 minutes, whatever, that you're gonna hear so much information as you've heard before. And there's going to be so many big things, and there's no way that you can take it back with you. No way. Yeah, you might, if you might catch a few crumbs to walk away with. Yeah, you might enjoy it, but you've got the opportunity now that I've created. I spent a lot of time in making a lot of notes, and it's going to be online. And there's going to be, I think on Thursday we're doing it. Yeah, Thursday. We're going to do the parent
isn't Wednesday the class?
Yeah, Wednesday. That's a Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday.
I think you said
yeah, Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah, that's a shorter class. That's the inside.
Yeah, it's going to be quick. Yeah, that's going to be like maybe 20 minutes maybe. But basically, if you make this, you can do what you want. I'm just giving you a heads up from the beginning that if you make this a project of yours, yeah, you can jump. You can accomplish what's taken me, 2 decades in a much shorter amount of time. So I just wanted to give you a heads up there. Is there anything else? Is there a heads up?
The midget standing on a giant's shoulders. It's easy for us to see now. Thank you.
The what?
We're the midgets standing on the giant's shoulders. Thank you for growing tall.
Okay, so let's begin. So the Tanya breaks down. It's 53 chapters, and it's broken down. It's very it's structured in a very like what's the word? Very seichel-dik way. It makes a lot of sense the way it's structured, to say the least. So I'm not going to go through the entire structure now, whatever. But in these sheets that I've made, the top of it just gives you the first, like the structural overview. So I've grouped the first 3 classes, create one chelek, and we're basically discussing what is a Jew. Okay, the first chapter is going to discuss what we're going to do now is the human element of the Jew. Then the second chapter discusses the Jewish element of the Jew. And then the third chapter starts breaking down the mechanics of how the Jew, the mechanics of the soul. Okay, so chapter 1 begins. The class is called The Human Soul and Being Human. Okay, so chapter 1 begins with the Rebbe telling us that there was a neder that we made, a shavua, before we came down to this world. It says that you promised to be a you promised to be a tzaddik and not to be a rasha. And if everybody in the world tells you that you're a tzaddik, you should see yourself in your own eyes as a rasha. Now, the Rebbe goes and asks a question on this, which is very important to realize that the question that the Rebbe asks on this is setting, he basically gives you the foundation of all of our Avodas Hashem. The question is, if you see yourself as a rasha, then you're not going to be able to serve Hashem b'simcha, with a tuv levav. From that, we understand that the foundation of all of Avodas Hashem is simcha. So the question becomes, what's simcha? So simcha is called technically psichas halev. The heart is open. Basically, what simcha means is that there is a emotional flow going through you. Okay? A person who's very besimcha will also mourn much more deeply. Simcha's got 2 opposites. The opposite of simcha, as we know, is atzvus, is depression. But also the opposite of simcha is avelus, mourning. What's the opposite of avelus? The opposite of avelus is simcha, but also the opposite of avelus is also atzvus. We're going to see that in a minute. The point is, simcha means that the heart is open and there's a free flow of the emotions, and that is the prerequisite for all of our Avodas Hashem. Okay, the Rebbe sets the scene very quickly to explain that. Now, the Rebbe jumps in to telling us that there's 5 madregas. Yeah, really, we could break it down. We could say that there's 2 madregas. There's what's called a tzaddik and there's what's called a rasha. Now that breaks down, the tzaddik breaks down into 2 parts. The tzaddik v'tovlo, the tzaddik v'ra'aloi, the tzaddik who has good, that tzaddik who has bad. And the rasha v'tovlo, the rasha v'ra'aloi, the rasha who has good, the rasha who has bad. And then he explains there's another, or he brings from the Gemara, there's a 5th category of Jew called a Beinoni. Okay? So what the Rebbe goes about doing, which is very important right now, is he tries to dismantle any preconceived ideas that you have at this point. We would all answer the question, what's a tzaddik? Everyone's got an answer to what's a tzaddik, what's a rasha, probably even what's a Beinoni. The Rebbe, first thing he wants to do is to try and get you to this place of humility by explaining to you that you really don't know what's going on. That's a very, very healthy place to be at. A very healthy place to be at, where you are open to hearing something new. Usually what happens when we listen to something is we try and fit it in. All the chances are we're probably not listening anyway. But on the off chance that we do actually listen, then we're usually trying to fit what we're learning into how we understand reality as it is already. The ability to actually allow a piece of information to break down what you already know and to rebuild is a very holy. That's a very holy midah. It's called a nivus, and it also takes a lot of courage as well. It takes a lot of courage to let go of things that we preconceived ideas. And the Rebbe starts by saying, basically, we have no idea. So he explains like this. Firstly, he brings the story of Rabba. Okay, Rabba was the Rosh Hashiva of Pompedisa in Bavel, 1700 years ago, something like that. And when he was teaching a class explaining the different madrigas, he said he gave himself as an example as a Benoni. So immediately from that, the Alter Rebbe says, well, that can't mean then a Benoni. I mean, the simple thing is we think like a Rasha is somebody who does Averas, a Tzaddik is somebody who does mitzvahs, and a Benoni is like 50-50, half Averas, half mitzvahs, yeah? So immediately the Alter Rebbe says that can't be the case because Rabba couldn't have mistaken himself as a Benoni because he was only doing mitzvahs. He was a big tzaddik. So he doesn't let go of the fact that he was a tzaddik, but he brings out a very important point here. The definition of a nivus is you can't lie. You can't say I'm no good. If you're a concert pianist and somebody asks that they need a pianist to play for something, you can't say I don't know how to play the piano. Yeah, you can take the less complimentary option, but you can't lie. And really, the whole the whole of Tanya is predicated on that because the Rebbe says, well, Rabba obviously wasn't lying. He wasn't 50-50. There's no way that he could think of himself as 50-50. So he made a genuine mistake by thinking that he was a Benoni. So immediately the Rebbe is explaining that the Benoni doesn't even have any Averas, no sins. And that's not just in action, that's in all behavior, which means thought, speech, and action. Okay, so the first thing that the Rebbe tells us is you think that a Benoni is 50-50. Yeah, no, it's not the case. Then the next thing, sorry, just turn my phone off. Then the next thing the Rebbe says, the next thing then is he brings a pasuk from Eov, where Eov turns around to Hashem and he says, Bras tzadikim, bras rishayim. He turns around to Hashem and said, you created tzadikim and you created rishayim. Now that's problematic because isn't it you who decides whether you're going to be a tzaddik or a rasha? So now the Rebbe is bringing in there's this kind of like, there's this element of determinism. There's something being set by Hashem. The concept of tzaddik and rasha is not so clear cut right now because Hashem's got something to do with it. But we thought that a soul's a soul and you choose to do Averas, you choose to do mitzvahs, and then you become a tzaddik, you become a rasha. But there's something more godly about it, something more in Hashem's hands. That's the second point. And then the third point, which is really a very deep point, is like, what's like a middle act? What is a Benoni? If the guy's doing a mitzvah, yeah, he's a tzaddik. If the guy's doing an avera, he's a rasha. When is it that you're a Benoni? And then he brings the fact that even if you have like a rabbanon mitzvah of doing of giving tochacha, of rebuking someone, and you don't do it, then the guy's called a rasha. And if you're not learning Torah when you've got free time, if a person's not learning Torah when he's got free time, that's also considered a rasha. So the Rebbe is like, well, is there such a thing as a morally ambivalent act? Is there such a thing as like an act that's parav? Do you do anything that's parav? Like think of it in context with your wives. You're always either building the relationship or the opposite. Chas v'shalom. There is no power of acts in a marriage. Nothing just disappears. It makes things make bigger impacts, things make lesser impact. But it's always, you can always point to that action and say, I just caused my relationship with my wife to expand, to become deeper and more beautiful. Or I just did the opposite. I wasn't courteous. I just said to her, what's the time? As opposed to, do you have the time, please? Or something like that. Either way, the question is there such a thing as an act that's like in the middle? And the Rebbe says, no, there isn't. There isn't. So we have these three things that break down. Number one, a Benoni can't be someone with 50% Averas, 50% mitzvahs, because Rabbah said that he was a Benoni, and that can't be 50% Averas, 50% mitzvahs. Number two, Hashem has something to do with this Rosh Tzaddik thing. So that's also making us a little more confused. And then number three, is there such a thing, Bichlal, as a morally ambivalent act? Yeah. So the Rebbe basically pushes us into this kind of deeper appreciation of these terms. And what we're going to get to, B'ezrat Hashem, is to understand that these terms are descriptions of the different possible internal Jewish experiences. These are not people. It's really important to know that. When we're talking about the Tzaddik, the Benoni, and Rasha, and the Tanya, we're not talking about people. We're talking about inner experiences that are available to every Jew. You can have the experience of a Tzaddik Gamor, you can have the spirit of a Tzaddik V'Tovloi, the experience of a Tzaddik V'Raloi, the experience of a Benoni, the experience of a Rasha V'Tovloi, etc. They're all available to, and we can cycle through them on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. It's much.
So was he feeling at that moment that he was a Benoni?
That's a good question, but well, it could be, but we'll get to that later. That he explains that in the 13th chapter. But yeah, there's whatever. Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to basically be doing is it now for the next how many chapters? For the next like 17, even 26 chapters, you could say, we're going to be trying to get to grips with exactly what is this? Where is it in you? How do you feel it? What does it mean to be a Benoni? What's that inner experience about? That you never do an Aveira? Yeah, Benoni never does an Aveira. But where you have a split internally, there's this dichotomy, this selfish drive, where you really believe that you're something and you have your own independent agenda. And at the same time, you're utterly aware of the Ribbono Shel Olam. And then there's this pull there, but you never do an Aveira because his presence is so real to you. When does that happen? And it does. And there's other times when you don't even have a desire to do something wrong. It's like if somebody was to come and hand you if you have a very elevated davening and then somebody, just puts a big pizza pie in front of your face, you'll be like, please leave me alone. Just at least give me 5 minutes to just come down a minute, So that's what we're going to do. So now we're going to move gears. The Rebbe introduces the Nefesh Bahamis. Yeah, a Jew. Go on, throw out, without getting into a whole thing, definition of a Jew. What's the definition of a Jew?
We're Hashem's soldiers. We're Hashem's soldiers out here.
Technically, not what are we here to do. What's the technical definition of a Jew?
His mother's Jewish.
Everything is
that's how it happens. You know what the definition of a Jew is? Definition of a Jew is a human being with a neshama. A neshama's Jewish? No, neshamas are neshamas. A Jew can only be in this world. Once the body dies, the neshama goes up. Neshamas the neshamas. So the Jew is a human being with a neshama.
So Guy has no neshama.
The Goy does not have he does not have a nefesh elokis. He does not have a godly soul. He has a human soul. He's a human being. He's human. That's a tremendous level. He's a human being. But we are human, and we have a neshama. So we need to work out what this human part of this is. This is what the Rebbe is going to get into now. What's this human part of us? What does it mean to be human? So the soul that he introduces us to is what we call the Nefesh Bahamis. The truth is, in this chapter, he doesn't actually call it the Nefesh Bahamis. He doesn't even really call it anything. He just calls it Nefesh. It's the way we translate Nefesh is soul. Yeah, that's not really particularly helpful. To look at it as an energy or a drive is probably more helpful than calling it a soul, but it's complex. It's a complex being, and it's able to experience pleasure. It has ratzon, will. It has an intellect. It has emotions, and it has behavior. It behaves. It thinks, speaks, and does. Okay, it's an entire personality. It's a being. I think personality is a good word to use for it. It's an entire personality. Okay, now it lives in the blood. This human soul that animates us. It actually allows us to move and etc. But more than that, it's what drives us. It's not just the actual physical ability to move, but it's the kind of conceptual ability to move, the ratzon to move as well. Okay, it lives in the blood, just like, you know, if you crack open a battery, yeah, you know, there's like all that like juice that you want to that you don't want to like drink. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, so just like the energy, it's a really good marshal, that just like the electricity is contained within the battery acid, yeah, so to speak, the Havdil, so too the energy of this soul is actually contained within the blood. So to call it spiritual is not incorrect, but to call it physical is also not incorrect. They call it the most refined. They call it the gus shabadak and the dak shabagus, the most refined of the spiritual and the most spiritual of the refined. It's basically spiritual, but it isn't. It's basically physical, but it isn't. It's the go between physicality and spirituality. But the most important thing to remember is that it is created. It's mortal, which means it will eventually die and not be. And that is what causes it to do everything that it does, is predicated on this, call it fear of death. Everything that we do as human beings is predicated on a fear of death, on a deeper level, of fear of not being. That's causing everything. Our desire for pleasure, which is what it really translates as on the most profound, on the most fundamental level, our desire for pleasure is really a desire for life. Because Descartes said it. The truth is, I don't think he actually said it like this. He said it in French. I'm not sure the translation. I think, therefore I am. Yeah, you've heard that before?
Cogito ergo sum.
Ergo.
What's that?
I think, therefore I am.
He said it in French, though, no?
If that's French, it means cogito ergo sum, means I think, therefore I am.
Okay. So the way I understand it is it would be much more accurate to say I experience pleasure, therefore I am. While we are experiencing pleasure, you know absolutely that you exist. Now, that is what this Nefesh Bahamis is constantly looking for. It's the survival instinct in us that just wants to survive. But once survival is taken care of, like we spoke about the other time, is its desire is to solidify its existence, to be more, okay, to stick out, to be special, to acquire, to be more defined, more solid. Okay, so that's what's forcing, that's what's driving our human side, is to be more. Why? Because we're scared of dying. That's to put it in a nutshell. Okay, this existential profound fear of not being is causing our desire to survive. And once our basic survival is taken care of, that translates as a need for more, bigger, better, enhancement, embellishment, etc., to buy things, to solidify ourselves, etc. Now, this soul comes from Klipa, which is basically what we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. But the Klipa, as we said, is the mechanism that the Rebbeinu Shalom uses to give us free will, to create the illusion, and it is an illusion, that there is something else other than him. What's the only other thing that we think there is other than him?
Ourselves.
Us.
That's it. That's it. So this soul takes itself very, very seriously. He really believes in it. He really believes in himself. He really does. Now we're gonna not use the word ego. Okay, just from now on, you should know this is like a thing. I don't like the word ego. We'll use the word yesh habahami. Okay, but if you want to translate in your head, you can translate that as the ego. But yesh habahami is this sense of selfhood, this sense of independence that I have, which is the cause of all Avera. Because if I didn't think that I was an independent being, and I was just an extension of God, then how could I do something against his will? Couldn't be. So this soul is from Klipa, which means in short that it has its own separate sense of identity. It has its own identity in itself, and it believes that it's an independent being. Okay, and what it's doing to solidify its beingness, if that's everything that it is, there's 4 things that it's basically looking to do to solidify itself. Okay, the first one, we're not going to get into this, but we could talk about this for hours, is identification. It likes to identify with stuff, because when we identify with something, that's basically the merging. We'll talk about this in detail. This is a very big point. But the idea of when you identify with X is it means your sense of self merges with whatever that X is. It could be anything from a religion to a football club to your car to a backache to an abusive childhood. It literally could be anything, and that identification gives the Nefesh Bahamis a stronger sense of self. Okay, so it's constantly looking to identify, to dominate. Obviously, that gives you a stronger sense of self, to dominate over others. To recognition, which drives all of social media, and comparison, and that's again domination. But recognition, how many likes did I get? How many clicks and views, etc. did I get? Absolute shtuyot. Yeah, that's exactly, again, the Nefesh Bahamis. I mean, you see it in every, especially in LA, you'll see it. I mean, you see it everywhere, basically. In LA, I think it's in maybe actually it's regressing now in LA. It's like it's just gone on hyper. They're like 50 years ahead of everyone. Anyway, eventually it will destroy itself. It will actually undo itself. So I'd imagine LA will become the first place, the first enlightened city, because that's basically how it goes. Anyway, and then number 4, which we mentioned before, is pleasure. The more pleasure that it can experience, the more it feels that it exists. And that's driving all of our pleasures, that feeling of existing. Now, the Rebbe explains that the things of this world are made out of 4 elements: fire, air, water, and earth. He says it in a different order: fire, water, air, and earth. And he explains that from these 4 elements, the negative character traits of this nefesh manifest. So again, this we could talk about for mamash hours. From fire comes arrogance and anger. Now, obviously, we know that not everything in this world is made of fire, water, earth, and air. But there's two ways of understanding it. There's the four states, which is solid, liquid, gas, and then there's plasma, which is like an ionized gas, which is basically fire. So, but then there's also a more kind of mystical way of looking at these four elements. Fire, there are four different kinds of movement. Fire goes up, water goes down, air is opinionless, it just goes in any which direction, and earth resists movement. So that's my favorite way of understanding how this works. That's a much more mystical way of seeing it. But basically, this soul is composed of these four qualities in a selfish way. The neshama is actually composed with the outer levels of the neshama is composed of these four elements on a holy level, but we're not going to talk about that now. So from these four elements come these different, they're really pleasures, to be honest. Calls them midas. So from fire comes arrogance and anger. From water comes all the pleasures of this world, which would be food and relations, etc. From air comes talking shtuyot, divine batalim, late sonus, like joking around, boasting, lightheadedness, just nothingness. And from earth comes depression, or what he says comes laziness and depression. Okay, so like I said, we could talk about all of this for a long time, but just to try and put it in a nutshell, they're all pleasures. See, there's even a pleasure in depression. We think there's a pleasure in anger. Obviously, there's the obvious pleasures with sex and food and stuff, but all of these things are actually pleasures. They're not emotions. Just to put it in perspective, what does it mean, atzvus? What is depression? Anyone wants to throw out a definition of depression?
I'll throw it out, but just because I've learned a little bit of depression is a state where somebody's totally self-absorbed in their own and worried about, and not worried. I mean, it's just a total self-absorption of self and
Depressing the reality.
yeah,
Which makes your world more real.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
Feeling it
and that's a
depressing.
pleasure. Now, even
But
if
you
it's a
think
bad
that
pleasure,
everything's in
it's a
your
feeling,
control
it's a
also.
which gives more credence to your life, which is total
It's supposed to
sucker.
push you a little bit. You can turn it into honest.
So listen, I mean, the thing is that all of these things are an indulgence in self. Everything, if it's not Torah and mitzvahs, it's an indulgence in self. It says in the Parsha this week, actually, in the Or Chaim Kodesh, he said by Bihar, why is it that the Torah got, what's the connection between Shemitah and the Torah? And he said because Shemitah was a mitzvah for the land. The land was a gift that Hashem gave us. And the Or Chaim quotes the Rambam and says that you're not allowed to give a gift to a Oved Avodah Zarah. So Hashem had to give us the Torah so that he could give us the gift of the land. Meaning, before you get the Torah, you cannot not be Oved Avodah Zarah. Why? Because only with the Torah are you able to do something not for yourself. You're being commanded by God. Without the Torah, everything by definition is going to be, no matter how nice it looks, it's going to be rooted in selfishness. So that's called avodah zarah. Anyway, that's a side point. But the what you were saying is correct, but it really goes for all of the different pleasures. The definition that we're going to be working with for atzvus is it's not an emotion, it's a lack of emotion. It's an emptiness. It's a non-emotion. And why is it linked with laziness? Atzvus and atzlus are linked together, laziness and depression, because it's actually, I'm not talking about a clinical depression, yeah, but a regular depression, like not a physiological depression, but a regular depression is actually an a laziness to experience an emotion. It's an emptiness of an emotion. The guy's dead.
What is a physiological depression? What category would that fall under?
Well, that would be like, having like a fever or something. It's not. It's that's like a chemical in the body that does something to the brain. I'm not sure how that works, but the truth is anyway that we produce the chemicals that do this stuff, but sometimes they just get produced, or it could be to do with what you eat. A massive part of your emotional world, like a huge part of your emotional world, is dependent on the food you eat. Like, it's a joke, like people battling with all these like crazy character flaws, and if they just like worked out the right foods to eat and the wrong foods to avoid, it would like fix stuff in that a second. It's a joke.
How do you figure that out?
What?
How do you figure that out?
You have to read the right books. Anyway, that's not the class now, but there's definitely the right books to read. There's a book called Limitless that you can read, a good book by a guy called Jim Quick, Limitless. Anyway, so depression is actually a pleasure, which is a kind of laziness to experience any kind of emotion. So a guy who's depressed, not only is he not able to celebrate, listen to this, he's not able to mourn.
He's depressed.
He can't even mourn. Mourning, the heart is alive, just it hurts, it's from the left side. Simcha, the heart's alive, it feels good, it's from the right side. But either case, the heart's alive. Depression, the heart's dead. There can't be avodas Hashem with depression. There can't be. The Rebbe is going to give us a lot of answers later on how to get out of that. Okay, moving forward, we have to just quickly now, for this final part of the shir, which I think you guys are really going to appreciate, where we're going to understand the difference between a non-Jew and a Jew and a non-Jew. We have to define two terms, and the terms are good and evil. Definitions, without blabbering on for ages. Anybody has a definition of Tov and Ra?
Good is positive influence on the world. Any action that is taken that creates a positive spark into the world. And evil is something that takes away from the world. Right. Something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a Torah. We know what's good from bad, and it's not just a Torah for laws. It's a way of life. You want to be successful in life, do Tov. You want to be unsuccessful, do Ra.
Excellent. And what's the shoresh of that? What's the root of what you just said? Where does that come from?
Humility towards Hashem would be Toiv, and then self-arrogance, like I feel pleasure, therefore I am, would be evil.
Who's speaking? Everything. I don't see you speaking.
That's really.
Oh, hi.
It's what Yitzi said.
What?
Yitzi said last week that you have to basically say to Hashem, is it me or is it you? It's the same concept.
That's it. Tov and Ra, we are going to translate as selfish and selfless. Now I could give a whole big show on this. The truth is I've linked in the we'll send out these papers that I've made, and what I've done is I've linked essays that I've written in the past that will really help you get the, like, I'm not going to go into it now, it's a whole shir in itself, but take it for granted right now that Tov means selfless and Ra means selfish. Okay, and you'll see that you'll read, if you have the time, you'll look at this essay that I've written, and I'll explain it much more clearly. But that's the definition we're going to be working with right now. Okay, Tov means selfless, the ability to recognize the reality of another, that you are you're a manda amma. You're not a detail in my reality. You're a real thing. You're a real being. You're real. That's Tov. Ra is I'm real. You fit into if you fit in nicely into my reality, then I'll welcome you in. But if not, then I'll push you away. Or I'll destroy you. I'm not, that's Ra. Now let's discuss, because what we mentioned before is that the Jewish animal soul comes from the Klipa, yeah? The Klipa covers up Hashem, which gives us free will, yeah? But there's different levels of cover up. So for example, you've got a transparent window, yeah? That doesn't cover up anything. That's called Kadosh. When you look at an object like a Sefer Torah and you immediately think of the Ribono Shel Olam, yeah, that's called Kadosh. But now when it comes to concealment, we've got what's called translucent and opaque. Translucent is like frosted glass, you know, like milky glass, you know what I'm talking about? Like in the bathroom, yeah? And opaque is like a brick wall, like a fence, like a wooden fence. No light passes through. So there's what's called Klipas Noiga and the Gimel Klipas Tameus. Yeah, we'll just call it Klipas Tameus. The fact that it's called the 3 impure Klipas, the Tanya never discusses that at all, why it's 3. The Klipas Noiga, it's a Klipa, but it's a translucent Klipa. Means it covers over, but it allows some recognition of what it's covering. Meaning there's an element of toiv, there's an element of selflessness within the actual klipa. So the transparent glass, that's kulu toiv. When you look out of a clean window, you know, at the vista, whatever you're looking over, yeah. How aware of the glass are you?
When you're looking out through a clear glass, you're not paying attention to the glass.
Exactly.
Sometimes a bird will go straight into the glass.
What?
Glass is irrelevant. It's like a bird that flies into the glass. That's what he said.
The glass is toiv, mamash toiv, the tachlis of toiv, selfless, doesn't draw any attention to itself whatsoever. But now look at the frosted glass in your bathroom, yeah?
Yeah.
How much self is there?
It keeps a lot in, and it keeps a lot.
The glass like conceptually says, look at me, but you should know there's stuff going on behind me as well. But I'm also a man da'ama. He's not selfless. The brick wall says all there is me. That's it. That's opaque. That's completely impure. Now the Jewish nefesh Bahamis comes from the klipa that we call noiga, which means it has an element of selflessness mixed in with it, which means the Jew is able naturally to appreciate the reality of another. That is innate and natural to, don't get me wrong, a Jew can train himself to let go of that. But that's why we see Jews generally are Rachmanim, Goim lechasadim, and Baishanim. Yeah, they do chesed, they have Rachmanas, and they are embarrassed. Those are 3 traits of somebody who appreciates the reality of another. I do chesed because I appreciate that you're a man da'ama. I have mercy because I appreciate you're a man da'ama. I'm embarrassed because I appreciate that you're a man da'ama. Yeah? So the Jewish nefesh Bahamis, the human part of the Jew comes from that level, which means innately he has the ability to appreciate the reality of another. The nefesh Bahamis of non-Jews, and by the way, this isn't a blanket thing. My Rebbe said that in just generation, there's lots of non-Jews who have a nefesh Bahamis that is similar to the Jewish nefesh Bahamis, which also has mixed in. But the way the Tanya explains it, and this is in the first chapter because he really wants this to be very clear, is the nefesh Bahamis of the non-Jew comes from the complete klipa, which doesn't have any any good mixed in with it. It's completely opaque. What does that mean, Lemaisa? It means that the non-Jewish Nefesh Bahamis has no innate natural ability to appreciate the reality of another. But notice the words is very important. No innate natural ability to appreciate the reality of another. But it can, and it is chayiv to train itself to appreciate the reality of another. And here we see, this is the difference between the work of a Jew and a non-Jew in this world. This is so important and so unknown and so profound. The Jew, the non-Jew, his human soul naturally is unable to appreciate the reality of another human being, of another being bichlal. But using his intellect, he can come to appreciate that the right thing, the good thing, is to be selfless. Why? That's what they call the golden rule. What's the golden rule? Don't do to another as you don't want done to yourself. That's what Hillel said. Remember, Hillel said that to the goy who was trying to convert, yeah? He asked Hillel, give me the whole Torah standing on one leg. And what did Hillel say? He said, Da'alayich sani l'chavercha lo yisaved. On you, this is so profound. Da'alayich. The first words is you. What's hateful to yourself, don't do to another person. To which a non-Jew will say, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. What came first? You. Why didn't Hillel say, love your neighbor as yourself? Because he would say, why? What's that about? So Hillel phrased it, reference yourself, that's your reality, that's who you are. And now from that, use your mind to extrapolate that this other person also exists. That's the purpose of the non-Jew. That's his inner work. The inner work of the non-Jew is to train himself to achieve a genuine level of selflessness. But it's not natural to him. So using his God-given intellect, he can extrapolate from his reality to say, well, if I'm real, then l'chayra, you're also real. And I will act accordingly. That's the avoid of the non-Jew. So what's the avoid of the Jew? That can't be the avoid of the Jew. Why can't that be the avoid of the Jew?
It's innate with us.
Exactly. That's who we are. So what's the avoid of the Jew? That's a given that we can appreciate the other. The avoid of the Jew is to appreciate Hashem. How do you know that you appreciate another? What's the litmus test?
How would how you react to people? How you react in situations? I mean, what?
Act for them.
Well, go on. Can you explain what that? I mean, it depends what situation, but can you give me
explain the situation is if I wouldn't want to be ripped off myself in business and I'm about to go into a deal with someone, I would make sure not to rip them off.
Okay, but how
because
do I
wouldn't do unto others that I wouldn't want done unto me.
Fine, but how do I know that you appreciate his reality more than your reality? Could that be such a thing? Where you actually appreciate him, his reality, he becomes more choshev to you than you. Or let's say your wife, this is a really good one. Yeah, this is how it should be. That she is more real to you than you are to yourself. How would you know?
It's the limit test is the actions that you do towards the significant other. If you're
deeper.
if I'm only doing something that makes me happy when I'm with her, then that's not truly recognizing who she is in her own reality. If I fulfill in her will and her desire what she wants, then I'm pushing away my reality and accepting her Dalai Lama.
Absolutely perfect. Her Ratzon before your Ratzon.
Right.
That is the appreciation. That when you really believe that someone exists, their Ratzon becomes more choshev to you than your own Ratzon. You with me?
Yep.
So by the non-Jew, his goal is to make your Ratzon more choshev to him than his own Ratzon. That's a lifetime of work. That's a reason to come to this world. But by the Jew, that isn't the case because that's how we were formed. So our avodah, and this isn't natural to our nefesh Bahamis, is to train our nefesh Bahamis to put his Ratzon Yisborach before our Ratzon. That's not innate to our nefesh Bahamis. That's the
Questions?
difference between the work of a non-Jew in this world and a Jew in this world. We both have work to do, and they're different kinds of work.
Okay, so obviously I don't understand enough yet. That's why I'm asking. But it would seem that what you just described to me, experiential, I experienced the opposite. What you described that the Goyish soul is struggling with in life, I find I myself struggle with that in life. It doesn't come so innate to me. This obvious stroll. It's great. It's gabaldig, but that's something that it's an avoid that I work on myself. That's Aleph. B's this whole avoda with the Goy sounds. Let's just use a little bit Siddish terms. It sounds like their whole avodah is machshava ala leiv. Like they have a leiv, they have a heart, they have desire, they have a will. Now they have to use their machshava to harness the way they feel to create a space for another. That seems exactly what we're doing. It doesn't seem so far off. I'm not seeing such a big differences here.
So to answer the first question is there's what's called a teva sheni, a second nature. And in living in the societies that we live in and being exposed to the influences that we're exposed to that are telling you it's all about you, yeah, that becomes difficult. Go back to your Babas and your Zaydas and your Alta Babas and Alta Zaydas, and you'll see it wasn't like that by them. Okay?
Right. Okay, so we took on an extra skin layer that we need to break away.
And it will come away very quickly as well.
Right. Okay.
But that it will.
And now
Possible to peel away. But the difference between the avodah of the Jew and the non-Jew is infinitely different. The non-Jew is training his nefesh Bahamis to appreciate the reality of another human being. Now, if I can't appreciate you, that you're a man da'ama, that you're a Metzias, how am I going to appreciate that how can I appreciate God? I can't see him or touch him or hear him or smell him or anything. So if I don't believe in you, it's like, how will it's a kal v'chomer? If I can't believe in you, then how can I believe in him? And a lot of people that's the case. But when somebody doesn't believe in another human being, that's why Bein Adam L'Chaveiro comes before Bein Adam L'Makom. It's just that's how it goes. If you can't appreciate that the other guy is a Metzias, is real, how are you going to believe that Hashem's real? That doesn't make any sense at all. So the non-Jews avodah is to appreciate that you're real, that the human beings are real, and that will lead to a world of peace and of goodness and of just a geschmacka world. That's why they're called the Umos Ha'olam. They're here to fix the world. But we're an Am Kadosh. Our avodah is not putting the other person ahead of us, because that's what we do that already. Or we should be doing that already. The truth is, in this door, like you said, we've got to work on that quite hard as well. But our avodah is to bring ourselves to a perception of the Rabbeinu Shloim, where the Rabbeinu Shloim becomes more real to us than we are to ourselves. You with me?
Yeah, Jacques, one last question I have, just to understand a little bit better. You said that the definition of Nefesh Bahamis, or the Nefesh, is that first of all, the word you used was it's created, and because it's created, it's a ticking death time, and because we're coming closer to our death, we're trying to validate as much as life as we can in every single movement of life. Does that not exist for the Nefesh Elikis, which we didn't even talk about today, but isn't that also a curation?
Not essentially. It's not, it's of creator, not of creation. It has elements of creation, a lot of elements of creation, but its essence is of creator, not of creation. And therefore its desire is the exact opposite. Its desire is actually to merge and disappear into God. Whereas the desire of the Nefesh Bahamis is the exact opposite, to be as solid and as defined and delineated as possible.
Beautiful. Thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
That's chapter 1.
Wow. Wow.
I'll tell you,
Skaya.
Chevra, if you, like we said, I'm going to go with Yo. We're going to learn through it inside, and it'll probably take like maybe 25 minutes, I think. We'll do that. He'll tell you when we're doing that. But otherwise, like I said, if you want to, like now that it's fresh, if you want to take this as your project for the week, and then I'm going to send you a link to the sheets that I made. And if you want to read the extra essays that I included in it and stuff, as you get these ideas down, like I just said in the beginning, yeah, inspiration comes and goes. It's for children, inspiration. When we get these ideas mamash clear and they become they become part of our soul, it's like sitting in front of a tzaddik 24/7. That's what it's like. Because you know that within these ideas, the way it works is that within the letters are used to create words, yeah? The words hold meaning. The meaning holds the one who meant it. So when I say to you, I love you, yeah, contained within those words is the concept of my love for you. But contained within the concept of my love for you is me. And that's how it works with Torah. We just spoke a lot of words and we gave over a lot of concepts. If you get the words clear, then you know the concepts. But if you get the concepts clear, then you know the Avodah Shalom. And that's what we're here to do. That's it. Nothing else. Everything else is just whatever.
Selfishness.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions?
Skaya.
No, pretty clear.
Any questions, Yitzi? I mean, Yitzi probably has 45 questions, but
Top 10.
top 10.
Another
Yitzi.
home run. Home run. Thank you, Rabbi. Excellent. Looking forward to Wednesday.
My pleasure. Okay, Zaykazen. Happy
Okay, take care. And
Thank
Reb Shmuel, you're gonna send me a link. I sent it. Oh, you'll send me the thing for Spotify. I also sent out a Google Drive to all the chevra where I post everything. But do you think the website we should just?
Yeah, I'm like working on it. I'm getting it together.
Okay.
I'll keep you posted.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Yom
Skaya.
Tov. Yom Tov.